The Mongol Empire, founded by Genghis Khan, was the largest continuous land empire in history. A terrifying, unstoppable force that shattered ancient civilizations and rewrote the global map. But the true, horrifying secret of their power lay not on the battlefields of Eurasia, but in a dark, unspoken ritual that they reserved exclusively for their own royal blood. We've all heard of their cruelty, but imagine this. The Mongols executed entire cities, but refused to shed a single drop of royal blood. They believed that the sacred lineage of the Golden Family, the Altan Urug, was imbued with a divine spirit that must not be spilled upon the common earth. This belief led to a terrifying, ingenious method of execution: death without blood. This ritual was reserved for deposed khans, ambitious princes, and royal rivals. This was the ultimate political tool, ensuring a rival was annihilated without angering the sky god. Tengri, the Mongol prince, knew his fate was sealed when the executioners arrived, not with swords, but with silk carpets and thick felt rugs. The terrifying, agonizing reality of how they murdered their own family is the most profound secret of the steppes. The greatest secret of the Mongol dynasty is that the very law designed to protect the royal spirit was used to inflict a prolonged, suffocating agony upon their own sons. Don't you dare look away. Watch this entire deep dive documentary and subscribe to Crown of Dread, and you will learn the one secret about Genghis Khan's own death that suggests even he was subjected to the terrifying, bloodless execution ritual. The terror began not with the silk cord, but with the terrifying, unwritten law of the Khans, the Yasa of Genghis Khan. The Mongol Empire was governed by the Yasa, the unwritten yet absolute code of law established by Genghis Khan. The Yasa was simple, direct, and ruthless. Its purpose was to ensure absolute obedience, unity, and discipline within the sprawling, chaotic empire. The Yasa mandated death for crimes we consider minor today, for not returning a lost item, for polluting water, or for deserting a comrade. But when it came to the Altan Urug, the Golden Kin, the Yasa contained a single, unbreakable clause. No member of the Golden Family shall have their blood spilled upon the ground. This belief was rooted in the primal fear that spilled royal blood would pollute the earth and anger the sky god, Tengri, leading to devastating consequences for the entire nation. This law was initially designed to protect the Khan's family, but it quickly became the blueprint for political terror. The princes and rivals, knowing they couldn't be decapitated, soon realized they were condemned to a fate far worse. The law mandated a slow, terrifying method that honored the ritual while maximizing agony. This is the ultimate example of a totalitarian legal system. When laws become so dogmatic that they prioritize ritualistic form over basic human life, the cruelty becomes systemic and absolute. This same terrifying logic is used by regimes today to justify atrocities under the guise of legal necessity. But the most effective execution method wasn't strangulation. It was a bizarre, torturous ritual involving heavy felt, a ritual that terrified even the bravest warrior princes. When a Khan or prince was condemned by the new ruler, the executioners would arrive not with weapons, but with the felt carpet, a thick, heavy woolen rug, the very fabric used to line the Mongol yurts and keep the family warm. This object of comfort became an instrument of agonizing death. The ritual was precise. The condemned prince would be wrapped tightly within a heavy felt rug or carpet. Executioners, often the personal guards of the new Khan, would then begin the process of breaking the body internally. They would either stomp on the prince with their boots or systematically roll and crush the body until the internal organs failed or the spine snapped. This was a slow, terrifying process of internal suffocation and internal hemorrhage. The prince died of a combination of crushed bones, ruptured organs, and asphyxiation, all while the sacred felt absorbed the inner blood, ensuring none touched the ground. The executioners were often required to count the hours, not the minutes, of the prince's suffering. This method is a psychological mirror of the clean kill desired by modern regimes, a death that is legally and ritually acceptable, but fundamentally maximizes silent, prolonged suffering. The lack of blood was their ultimate form of moral hypocrisy, but the sheer scale of Mongol cruelty reached its peak when they executed entire cities using a bizarre, horrifying method designed to eliminate life without fighting. The Mongols' cruelty to foreign enemies was unparalleled. When Genghis Khan or his successors sacked a city that dared to resist, the resulting slaughter was often executed with a bizarre, ritualistic efficiency that shocked the medieval world. When a city fell, the population was often divided. The skilled craftsmen, scholars, and children were separated to be enslaved. The rest, sometimes tens of thousands of people, were marched outside the walls and systematically executed. The Mongol generals often forced these executions to be carried out not by traditional methods, but by mass beheadings or crushing, sometimes using stampeding horses purely for speed. The most infamous goal of this slaughter was to send a message of absolute, divine terror. The Mongols often built massive pyramids or towers of the severed heads of their victims outside the city gates, leaving them as a terrifying monument to the cost of resistance. The psychological impact of seeing a mountain of human skulls ensured that the next city surrendered immediately. This is the ultimate example of terror as military strategy. The Mongols understood that the scale of the atrocity was more powerful than the sword itself. This strategy of maximum visible terror is a terrifying, chilling precursor to the psychological warfare tactics of the 20th century. But the internal power struggle was often initiated not by a man, but by the women of the Mongol court, the terrifying, powerful Mongol queens. The Mongol Empire, unlike many other empires, afforded immense political power to the Khattuns, queens and royal mothers. While the Khan commanded the armies, the Khattuns often commanded the political stage, and, crucially, decided which prince lived and which died. The death of a great Khan often led to a regency council run exclusively by the Khattuns. They delayed the election of a new Khan for years, using their immense power to eliminate their own rivals and ensure their favorite son or grandson inherited the throne. This often involved the use of poison or the orchestration of the felt carpet ritual against their own nephews or stepsons. Sorghaghtani Beki, the daughter-in-law of Genghis Khan, is the most famous example. She was a brilliant, ruthless political operator who manipulated the succession to ensure her sons, including Kublai Khan and Hulagu Khan, seized power, while simultaneously eliminating her rivals through subtle, long-term political poison. This demonstrates the eternal truth of absolute monarchy. Power always flows to the most competent and ruthless manipulator, regardless of gender. The Mongol queens proved that the most effective political assassinations often wore silk and operated in the silence of the royal tent, not on the battlefield. We have traced the terrifying law of the steppes, but the ultimate, darkest secret remains hidden: the truth about the final moments of Genghis Khan himself. Did he also die by the bloodless ritual he created? The ultimate secret of the Mongol Empire remains the fate of its founder, Genghis Khan. His death in 1227 is shrouded in deliberate historical silence and rumor. The official accounts claim a peaceful death during a campaign, but the true circumstances are almost certainly linked to the very ritual he himself formalized. AWT shock fact. According to one chilling, persistent account found in Central Asian chronicles, Genghis Khan did not die in his bed. He was fatally wounded during a final confrontation, a wound that, if it caused blood to spill, would violate his own sacred law. Therefore, to ensure ritual purity, his own inner circle likely subjected him to the bloodless execution ritual he had codified. He was killed by his own law. The ultimate historical irony is that the man who built an empire on blood was himself denied the chance to die naturally, lest his sacred essence pollute the soil. His death was kept secret for weeks, and the Mongol army undertook a terrifying, brutal mission, massacring everyone they encountered on the funeral route to ensure no one could witness the procession or reveal the true, ritualistic manner of his death. This is the ultimate example of a totalitarian leader being consumed by the very doctrine he created. It shows that in systems of absolute ritualistic power, the dictator himself is never truly exempt from the rules of terror. But the most shocking psychological cruelty was the punishment reserved for the prince who dared to raise his head in rebellion, a torture designed to last not hours, but years. For a prince who openly challenged the great Khan, the punishment was often designed to be a slow, humiliating public spectacle. It was a terrifying form of political performance art, demonstrating that the Khan's wrath was absolute and could transcend mere death. One terrifying punishment reserved for a rebel prince was to be locked in a heavy wooden kange, a massive neck stock designed to immobilize the prisoner's head and hands. The prince was then often left in the freezing Mongolian steppe, exposed to the elements and the public gaze. Crucially, the kange was engineered to be just heavy enough that the prince could not lift his hands to feed himself, but not so heavy as to kill him quickly. This meant the rebel prince was utterly dependent on the mercy of others, often his former slaves or his most despised enemies, to feed him and give him water. The public nature of the humiliation was the core of the torture. The proud prince was reduced to a begging, helpless spectacle of the Khan's power. This method perfectly mirrors modern psychological warfare, where the goal is to annihilate the victim's dignity rather than simply end their life. The shame and dependence were the true instruments of terror, a universal tool of oppressors throughout history. But the cold, calculating logic of the Mongols was demonstrated by their meticulous, silent bookkeeping, a terrifying ritual of counting the dead that shocks historians to this day. The Mongol slaughter of cities was systematic, not chaotic. When a major city was sacked, the execution was organized into a terrifying, chilling ritual of efficiency. The general would order the entire population marched outside the gates and executed, usually by the massed archers or cavalry. After the execution, the Mongol soldiers were required to participate in the ritual of the head count. Each soldier had to bring back a precise number of severed ears or heads to prove their participation in the slaughter. This wasn't merely sadistic, it was a military accounting system. The generals, to prove the total annihilation of the enemy, would then order the construction of pyramids or mounds of skulls outside the city walls. This served as both a terrifying message and a form of military documentation confirming the absolute success of the conquest. This horrifying practice is the ultimate example of bureaucratic cruelty. The Mongols applied the principles of efficiency and accounting, normally used to track supplies and horses, to the mass murder of human beings. This combination of cold, modern logic and primal brutality is what makes their history so uniquely terrifying. But the greatest threat to the newly enthroned Khan was the secret pact between his generals and the powerful Mongol shamans, a pact that could predict and even force his death. The Mongols, for all their brutality, were profoundly superstitious, governed by the spirits of the sky and the earth. This spiritual reliance gave enormous, terrifying power to the shamans, Tengri's servants. The great Khan was not safe from the shamans. If a Khan proved weak, superstitious, or too reliant on foreign ideas, the shamans could declare that the sky god, Tengri, had withdrawn his favor. This spiritual verdict was often orchestrated by ambitious generals and khans, and it was a direct, terrifying death sentence. The shaman would perform a highly public, dramatic ritual, often involving self-mutilation or trance, to deliver the spiritual verdict. Once Tengri's disfavor was confirmed, the Khan's authority evaporated, and his assassination or execution by the felt carpet was guaranteed. The true power in the Mongol Empire lay in the hands of the general who could control the shaman's prophecy. This is a chilling historical blueprint for weaponizing religion for political gain. It demonstrates how religious authority can be ruthlessly manipulated to delegitimize a political leader, proving that faith and fear are the most effective tools of control in any empire. But the most perverse application of the Khan's cruelty was reserved for his beautiful captured princesses, a brutal ritual that served as a public, humiliating trophy of conquest. When the Mongols conquered a rival kingdom, be it Chinese, Persian, or Russian, the highest prize was the enemy's royal family. The treatment of the captured princesses and royal women was not merely enslavement. It was a devastating, ritualistic humiliation designed to permanently break the spirit of the conquered nation. The Khan and his generals often engaged in a highly public, calculated ritual of sexual violence against the captured princesses, often right outside the walls of the conquered capital. This was not random violence. It was a terrifying political performance, a brutal act of symbolic conquest, proving that the enemy's purity, honor, and bloodline were now entirely subservient to the Mongol will. This ritual of humiliation was recorded by multiple chroniclers from various nations, all of whom noted the terrifying, deliberate nature of the act. The princesses were treated as living war trophies, symbols whose public degradation was deemed essential to the political stability of the Mongol conquest. This horrifying chapter serves as a stark reminder that throughout history, systemic sexual violence has been ruthlessly used as a political and military weapon, a direct act of war aimed not at the body, but at the psychological annihilation of the defeated nation. We have seen the ritual execution and the terror, but the darkest secret of the Golden Family is the final chilling act of the last great Khan, the horrifying fate of his closest blood relative. The sheer brutality of the Mongol Empire extended beyond the battlefield and into the most private domains of the conquered. The captured royal women, empresses, princesses, and high-ranking concubines were often subjected to a terrifying fate that was a deliberate political extension of the conquest. According to numerous chronicles, when a great Khan died, his concubines and personal attendants were often sacrificed and buried with him. This was not an act of mercy. It was a terrifying ritual designed to ensure the Khan was served in the next life, just as he was served in this one. This practice meant that the moment the Khan died, his entire personal household was condemned to immediate, ritualistic murder. This ritual of human sacrifice was performed with the same cold, systemic logic as the felt carpet execution. It was done swiftly and secretly, ensuring that the Khan's burial site remained undisturbed and that the secrets of his death and the true scale of his life's depravity were buried forever with his retinue. The women were not just companions, they were possessions whose existence ended the moment the Khan's divine spirit left his body. This horrifying practice serves as the ultimate historical precedent for treating people as disposable property, a chilling example of how absolute power reduces human life to a mere resource necessary for the ruler's comfort, even in the afterlife. But the most agonizing final act of the Mongol prince was a terrifying personal burial ritual that condemned him to an eternity of isolation. For a prince or a Khan who was executed by the felt carpet ritual, the terror did not end with his death. The Mongols were nomads, and their burial rituals reflected their absolute dedication to secrecy and the avoidance of spiritual pollution. The location of the great Khan's tomb, including that of Genghis Khan, remains one of the greatest mysteries in archaeological history. This is because the ritual demanded absolute, eternal secrecy. After the burial, thousands of soldiers would ride horses over the gravesite until the land was utterly flattened and indistinguishable from the surrounding steppe. This was followed by a terrifying, prolonged isolation. The soldiers guarding the procession would often massacre every living thing, every person, every animal, every traveler they encountered on the route to the tomb, ensuring that no one could trace the burial place. This mass slaughter was an act of sacred duty, confirming the absolute desire to keep the sacred spirit of the Khan undisturbed and his final resting place unknown to the world. The gravesite is the ultimate expression of totalitarian secrecy. It shows that for the Mongols, control over information, the location of the tomb, was valued more highly than the lives of entire populations, a chilling parallel to modern state secrecy. But the most cunning weapon used by the Mongol Khans was not the arrow or the sword, but a terrifying, calculated gesture of mercy that guaranteed the slow, humiliating death of a captured royal rival. The Mongols, masters of psychological warfare, often preferred a slow, humiliating death for high-ranking foreign captives who were too prestigious to be executed swiftly. One notorious method was the gift of dehydration, a chilling display of false mercy. When the Mongols captured a powerful foreign king or prince, they would often imprison him in a tent or yurt. The Khan would order that the prisoner be given all the food he desired, but absolutely no water. This was seen as a ritualistic display of respect. The captive was not killed, but merely allowed to die on his own terms. The captive died an agonizing, prolonged death from dehydration, surrounded by abundance. This slow, humiliating demise was a terrifying lesson to the conquered. Even the Khan's mercy was a form of brutal torture. The conquered knew that the Mongols' ultimate power was their absolute, cold control over the fundamental necessities of life. This is the psychological torture of absolute deprivation masked as respect. It forces the victim to endure a slow, agonizing demise while technically being afforded dignity, a horrifying tool of cruelty that preys on the psychological need for control. But the true political sickness of the Mongols was their deep-seated corruption, a terrifying practice that guaranteed the poisoning of the entire royal court. For all their discipline on the battlefield, the Mongol Empire, once settled, became consumed by massive corruption, particularly within the courts of the later Khans. This corruption was a direct betrayal of the Yasa's strict moral code. The system of taxation and tribute collection became a massive engine for extortion and bribery. High-ranking officials and local tax collectors would routinely seize far more from the populace than was legally required, pocketing the excess. This was known as the tax of fear. The people paid not the legal due, but whatever was demanded, fearing the ruthless punishment of the Mongol administrators. This systematic corruption spread to the Khans themselves. They grew dependent on the massive illicit wealth flowing from the conquered territories, often ignoring the complaints of their own people. The Mongol Empire, which was supposed to be a unified force, became a fragmented network of greedy, self-serving warlords masquerading as imperial governors. The history of the later Mongol Empire shows that unchecked, decentralized power inevitably leads to catastrophic corruption. The Yasa was destroyed not by foreign invaders, but by the universal human lust for wealth, proving that greed is the ultimate undoing of any empire. We have witnessed the cold execution and the vast cruelty. But the final terrifying scar left by the Mongols was a medical secret, a silent killer that traveled with their armies and destroyed entire continents. The most profound, unintended consequence of the Mongol conquests was not political, it was biological. The massive movements of Mongol armies and trade along the Silk Road served as the perfect conduit for a silent, unseen killer that would eventually devastate continents. The bubonic plague, Black Death. Historical analysis strongly suggests that the plague, originating in Central Asia, was carried westward by Mongol armies and traders. The final, terrifying act of biological warfare occurred during the siege of the Genoese city of Kaffa in 1346. Mongol forces, suffering from the epidemic, famously catapulted the corpses of their own plague victims over the city walls. This was a devastating early use of biological warfare. This single, horrifying act, whether intentional or born of desperation, seeded the plague into Europe. The Mongol Empire, which never conquered Europe militarily, destroyed it biologically, leaving a scar that lasted for centuries. The terror of the Mongol horde was replaced by the terror of the unseen disease. We have revealed the entire horrifying truth of the Mongol system, the terror of the bloodless execution, the ritual sacrifice of life, and the devastating biological legacy. The Mongols chose to execute their royal rivals by slow suffocation under felt, the bloodless ritual, out of respect for the divine purity of their lineage. Do you believe this extreme adherence to a spiritual law which maximized the victim's agony for ritual purity is a more psychologically terrifying form of cruelty than the brutal but quick executions of other monarchies? Let the world know your verdict. Drop your opinion in the comments below. Subscribe to Crown of Dread for more hidden history, and join us next time as we unearth the terrifying stories of blood and betrayal from the secret courts of the Spanish royal family.